The car sat abandoned by the Trinity River, driver's door hanging open, keys dangling in the ignition, diaper bag untouched on the passenger seat. Inside, money, cards, everything intact. But the young mother and her 10-month-old baby? Gone. Vanished into the Texas heat as if they'd never existed. For 34 years, Evelyn Barrett's disappearance remained one of Fort Worth's most haunting mysteries. The case went cold before computers could connect the dots, before DNA could speak for the dead, before a single fingerprint could reach across decades. Every lead dried up in the scorching Texas sun. Every theory crumbled. The file gathered dust in a basement storage room, forgotten by everyone except the detective who wrote one final note before retiring. She's still out there. Someone just needs to look hard enough. This isn't just a story about a missing person. It's about a mother's desperate choice, a detective's unwavering belief, and the thin line between victim and criminal. It's about what happens when the system designed to protect you becomes the thing you're running from. And it's about how the past, no matter how carefully buried, always finds a way to surface. What a young cold case detective discovered in 2012, hidden in a yellowed envelope sealed 34 years earlier, would not only solve the case, but reveal a truth so stunning that it would force an entire city to question everything they thought they knew about justice, motherhood, and survival. Before we dive in, let us know where you're watching from in the comments. And if you love cold cases that span decades, hit that subscribe button. You won't want to miss what happens next. It all began on a sweltering afternoon in June 1978, when a young teacher named Evelyn Barrett kissed her husband goodbye, buckled her baby daughter into the car, and drove away from her home on Magnolia Drive. She told her neighbors she was heading to the supermarket. She never came back. June 12, 1978, Fort Worth, Texas. The kind of heat that makes the air shimmer and sticks your shirt to your back. Evelyn Barrett, 29 years old, elementary school teacher, mother to 10-month-old Savannah, stands in her driveway at 5:30 p.m. Her neighbor, Nancy Clemens, watches from across the yard as Evelyn secures the baby in the back seat. Nancy would later recall every detail of that moment: the light blue dress Evelyn wore, the way she smiled and patted Savannah's back, the sound of the car engine humming to life. It was so ordinary, so forgettable, except it was the last time anyone would see them. 2 hours pass. Richard Barrett finishes his shift at the oil pumping station and drives home around 7 p.m. Something feels wrong immediately. The kitchen light is on. The front door is ajar. His wife's car is gone. Inside, a grocery list sits on the dining table in Evelyn's handwriting. Milk, baby formula, batteries, crackers. He opens the refrigerator. None of the items are there. Upstairs, Savannah's crib is empty. The pink blanket folded neatly, toys lined up perfectly on the shelf. No signs of struggle, no goodbye note, just silence. Richard calls the police at 7:45 p.m., his voice breaking. "My wife and daughter are missing. I don't know where they went." Less than 3 hours later, Fort Worth police make a chilling discovery along the Trinity River. Evelyn's beige Ford Fairmont parked crookedly near the water's edge. Driver's door open, keys in the ignition. On the passenger seat, the diaper bag, unzipped, baby formula and water bottle inside. Evelyn's purse on the dashboard, money, cards, identification, all there. The backseat safety strap unbuckled, as if someone had just lifted the baby out. And on the floor, a grocery receipt time-stamped 6:12 p.m. Everything stopped there. Detective Ray Harlan stands by the water's edge that night, flashlight cutting through the darkness. In his 10 years on the force, he's seen missing persons cases, but something about this one feels different. Too quiet, too clean, like someone wanted it to look exactly this way. "A mother doesn't leave without her diaper bag and purse," he mutters to his partner. The question that would haunt Fort Worth for 3 decades: was Evelyn Barrett taken, or did she leave on her own? Within days, media attention explodes. Headlines scream, "Mysterious disappearance of mother and baby. Husband denies involvement." Richard Barrett becomes the prime suspect. Neighbors whisper about tension in the marriage. A colleague at Evelyn's school recalls her crying in the teacher's lounge, saying Richard controlled everything. When questioned, Richard admits things had been a bit tense lately. Then investigators find something devastating. An unstamped, unsent divorce petition in Evelyn's desk drawer, dated June 2nd, just 10 days before she vanished. The words are haunting. "I can't keep living in fear. I need freedom, and our daughter needs her mother." Detective Harlan watches Richard closely during questioning. The man's alibi checks out. Gate cameras confirm he left work when he said. But there's something in his pauses, the way he chooses his words carefully, that nags at Harlan. Still, without evidence of violence, without a body, the case stalls. On day 4, dive teams search the Trinity River. The water is murky, the current dangerous. For 3 days they find nothing. Then, caught in tree roots near the bank, they discover a small pink baby shoe. Soft fabric, rabbit design on the toe, soaked in mud and slightly torn. Richard confirms it's what Savannah was wearing. But here's where it gets strange. Forensics examines the soil clinging to the shoe. It's not from the Trinity River. It's red, fine, slightly dark, characteristic of soil from Amarillo, over 300 miles northwest of Fort Worth. What was Evelyn's car doing in Amarillo? And why would she drive there, then return to Fort Worth, only to vanish at the Trinity River? The FBI gets involved. They analyze tire samples from the Ford Fairmont. The results confirm it. Red soil from the Amarillo Basin. Based on fuel levels in the 6:12 p.m. grocery receipt, investigators model a possible route. If Evelyn left Fort Worth around 6:30 p.m., drove north for 4 hours, she could have reached Amarillo by late evening, then returned early the next morning. But why? What happened in those missing hours? During a second search of the Barrett home, investigators find a small wooden box hidden deep in Evelyn's closet. Inside, 3 pale yellow envelopes, sealed with tape but never stamped. Each one begins the same way. "Dear Savannah." Detective Harlan reads them alone in the empty house. His hands tremble. "If one day you read these lines, perhaps Mom had to go far away. Mom isn't leaving you out of fear, but because I can't stand life here anymore. Fort Worth is suffocating me. I'm afraid of losing you, afraid they'll take you from my arms." In the second letter, Evelyn mentions an old friend up north and a dry land red as dust. Red soil, just like Amarillo. The final letter is the shortest, written in what looks like panic. "If anyone reads this, please tell Savannah that Mom loves her. Everything I do is to keep her safe. Don't let them say otherwise." Not one letter mentions Richard. All the emotion, all the fear and guilt is directed at Savannah, the baby who isn't even a year old yet. Harlan realizes something that changes the entire direction of the case. This might not be a kidnapping or murder. This might be a planned disappearance. By late 1978, the investigation hits a wall. Without computer databases, without federal coordination, without any financial trail, there's nowhere left to look. The dive teams find no bodies. There's no evidence of violence. No witnesses come forward. Harlan submits a proposal. Expand the search to neighboring states. Coordinate with the FBI to trace Evelyn's vehicle identification number. Check for new driver's licenses under her name. The proposal is rejected. "No crime, no federal case," his superior says curtly. The Barrett case is officially classified as inactive in December 1978. Harlan is transferred to another unit, a clear demotion. As he packs the file into a brown box labeled "Pending, No Update," he pauses at the "Dear Savannah" letters one last time. One day, he whispers to himself, someone will find her. The box is moved to basement storage, where it will sit, forgotten, for the next 30 years. The years pass. Fort Worth moves on. The Barrett house on Magnolia Drive is sold to new owners. The wooden fence is repainted, new curtains hang in the windows. But Detective Ray Harlan never forgets. Even after transferring to property crimes, even after the department forbids him from accessing the Barrett file, he keeps a copy of one photograph in his wallet. Evelyn holding baby Savannah on the front porch, both smiling. He drives by Magnolia Drive sometimes, late at night, wondering. In 1982, a truck driver in Clovis, New Mexico, claims to see a woman matching Evelyn's description at a local market, with a blonde girl about 4 years old. Harlan follows up immediately. The lead goes nowhere. No one remembers. No address, no license plate. But then something stranger surfaces. A file clerk discovers a birth certificate filed in Amarillo in July 1978, just 3 weeks after Evelyn vanished. The baby's name? Clara Kaner, born August 12, 1977. That's exactly Savannah Barrett's birth date. The parents listed, Alexandra Maria Kaner and John Kaner. But when Harlan investigates, he finds no social security numbers for either name, no driver's licenses, no hospital records. The doctor who signed the certificate says he just followed procedure based on what the registrant told him. Harlan sends the information to the FBI. Their response is devastating. No basis for fraud verification, no reason for federal investigation. Another door slams shut. Harlan writes one final note in his personal file. If Clara Kaner is Savannah Barrett, then the mother planned this from the start. He seals the note inside the box and pushes it back into storage. In 1993, when Fort Worth establishes its cold case unit, Harlan, now over 60, gray-haired and tired, personally delivers the Barrett file. He's working as an advisor for digitizing old records. When he sees case number FW23178 on the list, all the memories flood back. He spends an entire afternoon in the basement storage room, opening the worn cardboard box. Inside, everything is exactly as he left it. The Dear Savannah letters, the copy of Clara Kaner's birth certificate, crime scene photos, and in a small sealed bag, the silver bracelet engraved S.B., found in Savannah's diaper bag. Harlan can't bear to hand over everything. He quietly keeps the Polaroid photo for himself, along with a copy of the bracelet photo. To him, they're not evidence, they're a promise unfulfilled. The cold case unit prioritizes differently. Cases with bodies come first, cases with suspects, cases with DNA. The Barrett file falls into the least likely to be solved category. By 1998, Harlan retires. At his farewell gathering, he arrives early and sits alone in the empty office, gazing out at the Fort Worth skyline. He pulls the faded photo from his wallet and places it in an envelope with a handwritten note. If she's alive, she's still a mother. He stores it in his home desk drawer, a memento for the part of the case that never closed in his heart. 2 decades pass. The Barrett file remains in storage, dust thickening on the box lid, waiting for someone patient enough to listen to what time hadn't yet fully told. March 2012. Detective Laura McKenna, 35 years old, sits in the basement of Trinity storage, surrounded by thousands of file boxes from unsolved cases dating back to the 1970s. Fort Worth is finally digitizing its cold case archives. McKenna graduated from Dallas Police Academy with a reputation for meticulous attention to detail. She reads old files like she's reliving someone else's memories, seeing patterns others miss. When she opens case FW23178, labeled Barrett, Evelyn, and Savannah, unresolved, no body, no crime, something catches her attention immediately. In the administrative section, there's a copy of Evelyn's 1977 driver's license, with faint fingerprints printed in the bottom corner. A detail everyone had overlooked. In 2012, technology had changed. The FBI's Automated Fingerprint Identification System, AFIS, could now read prints that in 1978 were useless. McKenna carefully detaches the paper, places it under the specialized scanner, and enters the file number. 10 seconds. That's all it takes. The screen lights up green. Match found, 98.7%. Alexandra Maria Kainer, Salem, Oregon. McKenna's heart pounds. She expands the data. Female, born 1949, Texas native. Occupation, elementary school teacher. The system shows an ID photo from Oregon's DMV. A middle-aged woman with light brown hair, a gentle smile, and bright eyes. Eyes that look exactly like the woman in the 1978 Polaroid of Evelyn Barrett. McKenna works methodically. She requests every record Oregon has on Alexandra Kainer: driver's licenses, employment history, medical records. She feeds photos into facial recognition software. The results? 91% match. When she zooms in on the eyes and jawline, the features align perfectly. But McKenna needs more. She needs irrefutable proof. She requests Fort Worth Forensics search for DNA samples from the 1978 file. Incredibly, in the sealed bag containing the Dear Savannah letters, there's an envelope Evelyn had licked to seal. The saliva stain might still hold DNA. While waiting for results, McKenna continues investigating Alexandra Kainer's background. The birth certificate for Kainer's daughter, Clara, was issued in Amarillo on July 3, 1978, the same certificate Harlan had discovered 30 years earlier. McKenna sends a copy to an FBI document expert. The response comes back quickly. The seal is a forgery. The industrial ink used didn't exist in 1978. 3 days later, the DNA results arrive. Match. 99.6%. The woman living as Alexandra Maria Kainer in Salem, Oregon, is Evelyn Barrett from Fort Worth, Texas. After 34 years, the missing mother had been found, not dead, but alive, living under a false identity. McKenna needs one more thing: the story in Evelyn's own words. She tracks down Margaret Hill, Evelyn's old friend from Fort Worth, now living in Denton. When McKenna mentions Evelyn Barrett, the elderly woman's hands tremble. "I've waited 30 years for someone to come," Margaret says quietly. She brings out a silver tin box tied with a faded blue ribbon. "Evelyn asked me to keep this. She said if anything happened, to give it to whoever came looking." Inside, a dark brown, leather-bound notebook. On the first page, that familiar slanted handwriting. "Dear Savannah, for when you are old enough to understand." McKenna reads page after page, her throat tightening. Evelyn had documented everything: cutting her hair short in a gas station bathroom, getting the forged documents in Amarillo, driving through the New Mexico desert with baby Savannah coughing in the passenger seat, arriving in Salem and applying to teach under her new name. One passage stands out. "Salem, Oregon. Rain falls all day. Mom says we're from Kansas. Every night, Mom writes you a few lines just to remind herself the past hasn't vanished." Clipped between 2 pages is a Polaroid photo. Evelyn in a brown coat, standing by a wooden window, holding the blonde-haired baby. Below, she'd written, "Clara, 11 months old." The diary isn't just evidence, it's a confession, a love letter, a final testament from a mother who chose to disappear rather than lose her child. McKenna closes the notebook gently, knowing she's holding the key to solving Fort Worth's oldest mystery. September 6, 2012. A U.S. District Court judge signs arrest warrant F-12376 for Alexandra Maria Kainer, whose true identity is Evelyn Barrett, on charges of using forged federal documents and obstruction of a criminal investigation. McKenna flies to Salem, Oregon with an FBI team. They conduct 3 weeks of quiet surveillance, watching the woman who had vanished from Fort Worth 34 years earlier. Every morning, Alexandra Kainer drives her silver Subaru to Bush Elementary School, where she teaches 3rd grade. She greets colleagues, leads children across the street, her smile gentle and routine so steady that no one could imagine this woman was once at the center of a federal manhunt. At 4 a.m. on a foggy October morning, the arrest team approaches the small, red-tiled house in suburban Salem. 3 soft knocks on the door. Footsteps inside. The door opens. The woman stands there, silver-streaked hair, wearing a cream linen robe. Light from the living room illuminates her face. She shows no fear, no panic. She just looks at the agents and smiles faintly, sadly. "You're 30 years late," she says softly. McKenna steps forward. "Miss Barrett, by order of the federal court, you are under arrest." Evelyn nods slightly. "I've been waiting." A noise from the stairs. A young blonde woman freezes at the sight of strangers in her home. Clara Kaner, the baby Fort Worth once knew as Savannah Barrett, stares at the scene in confusion. "Mom, what's going on?" Evelyn turns toward her daughter, but is stopped by an agent. "It's okay, honey. It's just that Mom owes someone an explanation." Clara had never heard her mother mention Fort Worth, had never known the name Barrett. All her memories began in Oregon, the school days, the small house, the gentle mother who always said they only needed each other. Now, in the cold dawn of a Salem morning, she watches her mother being read her Miranda rights. As agents lead Evelyn to the vehicle, she turns back one last time, looking at the house where she'd lived for 30 years under a new name. Clara stands in the doorway, face pale, tears streaming. "So all this time," she whispers, "who am I?" December 2012, Fort Worth District Court. The courtroom is packed. Detective McKenna sits in the back, 2 sealed evidence boxes in front of her. Prosecutors argue this isn't a touching story, it's decades-long identity fraud. Defense attorneys argue Evelyn was a victim of an era when women's voices were dismissed, when a custody ruling could destroy a family. When it's Evelyn's turn to testify, she speaks calmly. "I know I broke the law, but I didn't kill anyone. I didn't steal from anyone. I was just afraid of losing my daughter. If someone calls me a criminal, I accept it. But please understand, I only fled the life where I was no longer allowed to be a mother." Judge Addison sentences her to 18 months in prison, followed by 2 years supervised release. As the gavel falls, Evelyn nods toward McKenna. "Thank you for finding me," she whispers. "At least now I don't have to hide." The Barrett case becomes a national conversation about motherhood, justice, and the limits of the law. Was Evelyn Barrett a criminal? Or was she a desperate mother pushed to the edge by a system that didn't know how to protect her? Detective McKenna returns to the Trinity River one final night. She pulls from her pocket a small copy of the photo, Evelyn holding baby Savannah, and lets the wind carry it to the water. "She was found," McKenna whispers to the darkness. In the Fort Worth Police Department, case FW 23178 is officially stamped, resolved. Truth recovered after 34 years. Ray Harlan, the detective who never gave up, passed away in 2010, 2 years before the case was solved. But in a drawer at his home, family members found the photograph he'd kept for decades, along with a handwritten note. "If she's alive, she's still a mother." He was right all along. The Evelyn Barrett case reminds us that truth, no matter how deeply buried, always finds its way to the surface. It took 34 years, 8 pieces of evidence, and 1 detective who refused to let the past stay silent. Was justice served? That's for you to decide. What we know is this: a mother made an impossible choice, a detective kept a promise, and a daughter learned that sometimes the truth is more complicated than we ever imagined. If you believe that cold cases matter, that every missing person deserves to be found, hit that subscribe button. Share this story. Let's make sure no case is ever forgotten. Thank you for watching True Crime Unveiled. Until next time, stay curious, stay compassionate, and never stop seeking the truth.